I'll go out there and sell the product. Off I go, calling on all these sports shops. Great. Here I am, meet the guy, the buyer. I'm Reebok. Who's Reebok? Who's Reebok? Well, it's me, showing the product. Oh, nice product. And then he'd look up and think, look, I've got Dunlop. I've got Adidas. Why do I need Reebok? And I must have heard that a dozen times. Why do I need Reebok? So it occurred to me he didn't need Reebok. These retailers didn't need me. They used to sell anything. They were just sports shops, usually run by an ex-footballer who just opened the store, and he'd sell everything from snooker cues and chalk for your tip and anything that was sport. So we were lucky. We used to go to these events, these running events, and I thought, these are my customers. I should be selling to these guys. And well, the 3As in those days, the Amateur Athletic Association, they had a handbook. And every club, every running athletics club was affiliated to the 3As, and there must have been 400 in this book. And we got the name and address of every secretary of every club. What do? A letter. I send a letter to every club and invite them to buy direct from us, and we'll give them 15% discount. And if anybody in the club wants to become an agent, he can have the 15%. And great, I got 100 agents on that first letter. Second letter, another 50 agents, and eventually I ended with about 250 agents. That was our business. Now we were selling direct. And I'm then getting phone calls from these sports stores who said, who's Reebok? And they're saying, you're selling to our local sports club. Look, I'll stock your product if you stop selling direct. And I said, no, I'm not stopping selling direct, but you can get it at wholesale price, which is less than 50%. And I'm sure you can give your sports club 15%, because that's pretty normal discount for clubs. About 90 of them agreed, but I'm not going to stop selling direct, because to us, that was our marketing. You know, that was how we got our market, and great. So we had a very nice business, but you know, the big business was football, and we couldn't get there because Adidas really had got that sewn up. So for me, it was America, and the family were not too happy to send me to America or let me go to America, because that would have cost a lot of money to go there and start looking for distribution. So luckily, I'm reading a magazine, Eurosport I think it was called, and the British government are advertising for people to export. And they're saying, we will pay, we will actually pay for a stand at the NSJ show, that's the National Sporting Goods of America. We'll pay for a stand, we will pay your return airfare, and we'll also pay 50% of your expenditure whilst you're there. So that was it. I'm going to America. It's 1968. Almost 350 million Americans speaking English. The disposable income of the Americans was incredible. If you rank that as 100, America's 100 in terms of disposable income, and the nearest one was Japan, which was 35. Germany was about 30, and the UK was about 18. So in terms of where do you go? Because people said, why don't you go to Europe? It's nearer. You know, you've got 26, 27, 28 countries, different languages, cultures. So going to Europe, great. But then again, you had Adidas and Puma. They were in that market. They were tough. Why go somewhere which is going to be tough? Why not go somewhere where you've got a better chance? Because in America, we knew that every university, every college had coach, and coach was a god. And you could go to those colleges with a sports scholarship. I think we only had one in the UK that you could go to with a sports scholarship. However, in America, loads of them. So that's why I chose that market. This is where we could go, and they all did track and field. Athletics was big in America. So if I wanted to expand our business, America was the one to go to. So that was the choice.
What's the cultural differences in doing business then in America to what you found in the UK?
Well, I think the cultural difference was that they accepted things more than in the UK. The UK was sort of, if they had something, they stayed with it. It's like, we already have this, so why do we need something? Just like those retailers that I met who said, why do I need Reebok? In America, they don't do that. Reebok, another brand, another opportunity. They're more open to opportunity. So for me, it was a market, but how do I get into that market? Okay, I can show the NSJ show, and on that first show in 1968, I got a lot of people coming up saying, well, great stuff. Where do we buy these? And I'm saying in England. What's that? Is that New England? No, not New England. It's across the water, England. Oh, London. That's it. That's where we are. They were not of a mind to import. So all these stores, again, small stores, a bit like they were in England, small stores. No, too much hard work. So I'm 1968, and I now have to search and find a distributor. When do I get my distributor? 1979. 11 years. 11 years of keep going to America. I had 6 attempts, 6 people who gave it a shot. Yeah, we'll try Reebok. They all failed. We just failed miserably. One guy I had for 4 years trying to get into that market. In the end, he gave up. We didn't get there. But the difference was that when I first went, running was really only just starting to be something in America. By 1975, it was a big event in America. So many people were out running. So the demand for running shoes grew. During those years that I was going, running shoes grew tremendously. And a magazine called Runner's World, they started in the late 60s, and by 1975, they were a 50-page full-color magazine telling everybody where the next event was, where your 5K, 10K, half marathons, and who won this race, who won. So everybody bought this. 350 million Americans, probably 35 million were running by then. Great. And later on, about 76, Bob Anderson, who produced this magazine, he was doing so well. He knew he could tell everybody which was the best shoe to buy. So he produced this shoe edition, and of course the best shoe to buy was Nike. Wouldn't it be? Nike, great. Phil Knight was really thrilled. Fantastic. But Phil Knight was importing those from Japan and Asia. And when somebody like Bob Anderson tells you, this is the #1 shoe, out of those 35 million Americans running, I want a pair of those. At least 10%, at least 3.5 million wanted that shoe. Phil Knight had no chance. You can't just turn the wick up like that. It's not, and all of a sudden, so for 12 months, all the retail trade, they're being hammered. I want a pair of those #1 shoes. They couldn't get them. And Bob Anderson, in his wisdom, at the end of 1 year, decided, no, we've got to have another #1 shoe. And just as Phil Knight's getting the product coming in, Bob Anderson puts another #1 shoe. It might have been New Balance, Etonic, Brooks. I don't know who it was, but it certainly wasn't Reebok. Same thing that happened with Phil Knight. They couldn't supply. By the time they get supplies in, another 12 months had gone. And now, though, Bob Anderson probably got his act together and decided, instead of saying there's a #1 shoe, I'm going to do star ratings. So the top shoe would be 5 stars, but you could have 3 or 4. And that was my ticket. I knew getting #1 was a lottery. That was very difficult, but I knew we could make a 5-star shoe. So in 1978, we made a shoe which we thought would become 5-star. We tested it in Edmonton at the Commonwealth Games, and we got a shed load of medals. We did really well with our shoes in Edmonton. So we talk about February. This is when the NSGA show is. February 1979, and I have my Aztec shoe, my great shoe. I have it there, and running was so big a category now that Kmart, I don't know if you know Kmart, they're a very big distributor, big retailer. They have lots of sheds. They're one of the big retailers in America. And they came along, a guy came along and said, look, we want 25,000 pairs. Ooh, yeah. That's about 6 months' work for our small factory in the UK. But, you know, we didn't go into this rather stupidly. We knew if we got a 5-star shoe, we needed help. And so I had friends which I'd developed, and one of those friends was in Bata. Bata still are the biggest shoemakers in the world. And they were down at Tilbury, which is pretty close to here. And my friend said, look, we'll help. You get any orders, we'll help you make them. But the guy from Kmart said, yeah, but we need a better price. Now, although Bata could make them at a better price than we could in our small factory, he meant Asia, South Korea. Luckily, again, we'd made contact with the Korean agents in London. So they were already taking the shoe and preparing samples for me. Okay, fine. So, yeah, we could do that. So that was Kmart, but I'm thinking, that's a big business, and they just work on square footage. If they buy 25,000 pairs and they don't hit the financial figure for the square footage they give the shoes, that would be my last 25,000 pairs. So towards the end of the show, a guy called Paul Fireman came on the stand. And Paul Fireman was running a small company called Boston Camping. That's an outdoor company, and they were selling tents, fishing rods, you name all the bits and pieces that go into outdoor. And he was running that with his brother and brother-in-law. And I could tell by the way he was talking, he was pretty fed up. They've been doing it for 10 years and it was going nowhere. So I said, Paul, look at this shoe, 5 stars. He said, you're not 5 stars, are you? No, we're not 5 stars, but you know, think of August and we hope we'll be 5 stars. So with Paul, he said, look, I said, Joe, if you get 5 stars, I'll be your distributor. Now, I like Paul. I could get on with him, you know, but the buyer from Kmart, it was like so remote. But Paul, you know, he knew a bit of business, he had to do business, he had to finance it. So, apart from the fact that I went across between February and the end of July to see Kmart and check them out, big company, big operation. I also went to Boston to see Paul and his brother and his brother-in-law. Nice little operation. I think it'd be nice. Bolt Reebok onto this. Fantastic. Okay, so we get to the end of July, and the August edition of Runner's World will be out at the last week in July. And I phoned Paul. I said, Paul, can you go down to the local kiosk? They must have Runner's World on by now. An hour later, he came back. I said, Joe, Aztec, you got 5 stars. Oh, that was it. Wonderful. He said, not only that though, Inca, which was a spike shoe that we also sent for checking, that got 5 stars. And Midas, which was a racing shoe, also got 5 stars. So there we were. We'd arrived in America with 3 5-star shoes. Previous to this, we'd been pushing. Now, people wanted us. So now we're in America, and Paul Fireman is going to be our distributor.
What's interesting about that, what was coming into my head is, what is then happening when you're having to go through the 11 years? Like, and I was reading some of the notes, it's almost like no matter how well you plan, make contingency plans, external factors could easily derail you at any time. How did you have the faith to keep going on? Like, because wasn't there ever a time you thought, actually, no, let's just leave this part, let's just focus on the UK?
We became so well known in the UK that distributors in the UK wanted to take us and distribute our product. It meant giving up agents, and it meant giving up direct sales. But I thought, well, if we do that, it'll give me more opportunity to concentrate on America, to get somebody to do distribution. The first one, great, friend of mine. He was the friend that actually went to Bata eventually. So that was good. Unfortunately, That was about 70% of our production was our Reebok production. And the company I went with, Lawrence, they went out of business. It's a story. It's in the book, what happened to that. But we went out of business, and it nearly cost us dear. But we had to put a plan together. We had to go down and collect all the shoes they hadn't sold, bring them all back, and then we started direct selling again. We started everything we could do. Otherwise, I think if the bank manager had got hold of the fact that we were not going to get paid for those shoes that we'd sent out, I think he would have had a big problem and would have been questioning our small but overdraft figures. Yeah, we'd have done. However, 2 months, it took us 2 months, maybe total 3 months, to recover from that, sell all the product. And surprisingly enough, because we were selling this direct, we were making more money. We were making more money than going through the distributor. So really, in a way, it helped our finances. We recovered from that. And shortly after that, another company came up who heard of the problem, but they also knew that Reebok was quite a desirable product. So I went with another company, and that took over. So these things were happening during those 11 years. We were growing, doing different things. We did something like, to get more visibility, during the 70s, so many countries, so many major cities started having marathons. And those marathons, they were on television. So every country, whether Brussels, whether Berlin, or, London, they all had these on television. And I thought, how do we do something here? So I organized Reebok Racing Club, which meant vests. People could become a member of Reebok Racing Club, and it had Reebok Racing Club all the way across here. And so we started giving them to top athletes that we could give them to in the UK, and we came to a deal that if you would run at the front of a marathon and stay there as long as you can, we'll give you shoes as well. So we gave them the shoes, we gave them the kit, and they went up front, and all these televised marathons, there was Reebok Racing Club at the front, maybe 5 or 6 guys. They weren't going to win, but they could probably do the best part of 20 miles up front. So that gave us a lot of promotion. So a lot of these ideas we had to really boost the company and boost its appeal as much as anything helped. But of course, once we got the Holy Grail, once we got three stars, or 3 shoes with 5 stars, wow, that was it. We're in America. As far as I was concerned, we got there. But that wasn't the thing that made Reebok grow. Aerobics. Women. Aerobics. We had, whilst we were growing nicely as a running company, we had a tech rep called Angel Martinez down in LA. His wife, Frankie, she's going to aerobic classes. He didn't know that. But they're coming back with their friends and they followed it, great. And Arnold is saying, Frankie, what are you doing? And she said, we're doing aerobics. What's aerobics? Well, we're actually exercising to music. And it's great fun. Arnold went to the next class. There's the instructor in a pair of sneakers. We think they might have been New Balance. Half the class are wearing sneakers. The other half, they've got nothing on the feet. Right. And this was Arnold's light bulb moment. He thought, why don't we make a shoe specifically for this, for aerobics, and make it for women, on a woman's last, women's sizes, out of nice, soft glove leather. Fantastic idea. His idea was so good, he decided he'd go to see Paul Fireman. He's in Los Angeles, the other side of the country, Boston. He got the plane, got to Boston, went to see Paul Fireman, and explained everything. And Paul said, slow down, Arno. We're a running company, and we're doing very nicely, thank you. Why do we want to make dancing shoes for girls? And he tried to, but Paul was saying no. Keep your eye on it, and if it starts to grow and do something, we'll think about it. Arnold wasn't happy with that. So Arnold went down to the back door was only small in those days. Back door, Steve Liggett. Steve Liggett's our production man, and he's in Korea more than he's in USA, but he's there. He did a better job with Steve. He convinced Steve, we really must look at this. Arnold got his 200 pairs, and he's given these to the instructors, some of the leading girls, and fabulous. They loved them. They're so comfortable. They were great. And the girls were not just wearing them for the aerobics, they were also wearing them in town, going to work, doing whatever. They were so comfortable. One problem. They're made out of glove leather. And glove leather, you can tear it like a piece of paper. It's 0.7 of a millimeter thick. And when you take the surface off, because you've got to stick a sole on it, you've got to put glue on, it's half a centimeter. So 0.5 of a centimeter. Disaster. And yes, after 1 month, these shoes were just falling apart. Fortunately, we're in Los Angeles, and the girls didn't care. They thought the shoes were so comfortable, they went out and bought some more. Okay, we had to answer the problem. First thing we did was, well, first thing that they've manufactured, they actually laminated it with nylon. And when I learned about this, because I didn't learn about the fact that they were making them out of glove leather, if I'd have heard about that, I'd have probably said, whoa, what are you doing? However, marketing is something, shoemaking is something else. And so they started laminating it with nylon. And I said, look, you can't do that, because the natural thing of leather is that it breathes. You put nylon on it and you stop it breathing, so they're going to get all sweaty, they're not going to enjoy that. So what did they do? They punched a series of holes in the front to allow air to circulate. Fine, marketing again, not shoemaking. They did that, but we still had problems with the softness of the leather, the thinness of the leather, and we eventually cured that by making it with more like a garment leather, which was thicker, still soft and supple. Great. So we got that right, and the girls loved those shoes. And when Jane Fonda went out and bought a pair of Reeboks to use in her exercise videos, that was it. All of a sudden, boom, we just exploded. We were a $9 million company at that point. 12 months later, we were a $30 million company, then a $90 million company, $300 million, then $900 million in under 5 years. Surprisingly enough, whilst we were still doing some running, the aerobics just took it. That was, I mean, you can say that 95% of the growth was aerobics. It grew so rapidly, so fast. And when you think about it, that really was white space. There was nobody there. We had it. And this was something. Women had never owned an athletics category before. All of a sudden, they owned this. This was just women. And the men were saying, what's happening? We love the look of those soft shoes. We kept it away from, we couldn't give it to the men because keeping up with the demand for those aerobic shoes, that was our biggest problem. We almost forgot how to sell product because it was a matter of could we keep up with demand that was already there. And we were lucky. We were lucky when we're going from 300 to 5 to 900. It's how do you get the product? It wasn't the money anymore. It's how do you get the product? And Nike just hit a wall at that time. You know, they'd been going tremendously, but all of a sudden they found themselves with too much inventory and it wasn't selling as fast. So they came out with about 3 major manufacturing units in South Korea. And we were just ready. We just went straight in. And that allowed Reebok to really sort of take advantage. Okay, we'd got to almost $1 billion, and the company then started we had to move into other categories. We had to go into baseball, into basketball and American football. I don't think we did too much in baseball. We grew in basketball. You know, Shaquille O'Neal, that was great. And you mentioned pump. Pump was something that really belonged to basketball. And I don't know if you remember Dee Brown. Dee Brown, yeah, halfway, dunks the ball, bends down, and he pumps up his shoes. That everybody talks about that. Even now, when I meet them, oh, I remember, you know, and they were all kids like you know, when you're kids. I want a pair of pumps, and parents are saying, no, too expensive, too expensive. You know, you can get some Converse, you get whatever. Those pumps are too expensive. But no, they went out and got a job. anything to save up some money and get a pair of Reebok pumps. So we grew to about 3.8, almost just short of 4 billion. And at that time, I'm traveling the world. I'm putting on distribution. And I'd put on America, now I've put on another 30 countries. So I got 30 countries. I'm also hosting a pro celebrity tennis tournament in Monte Carlo. And the celebrities were all A-listers from Hollywood. We had Sinatra, we had Roger Moore, we had Sean Connery. You can name them all. There were so many of them that we had over there. And this was great. And I was doing the hosting and doing the traveling. And when I'm traveling, I'm picked up with a limousine, going to the best hotels, dining at the best restaurants, but the challenge had gone. You know, I'd had a challenge for so many years to really do whatever. Now we had so many accountants, so many lawyers, and all these people in between. And to me, it was just traveling, and the challenge had gone. Great, thrilled that the company is still there and the company is doing well, and I'm always thrilled about that, and we'll always support that. But for me, that personal challenge, yeah, so it was time to step back. So at the end of 1989, early 1990, I stepped back and enjoyed life. But eventually, I got to write a book.